Hi, mystery writers. Welcome to Mystery Writer Studio. And today I want to talk about your fabulous, wonderful, skillful detective and how they need flaws. Because flaws make them relatable to your reader. In fact, um, a character without flaws and they're flat. They're not very interesting, and they're essentially too good to be true. So, I've talked about how you want to get your reader to care about your detective right at the beginning, and you want to show their skills and how they deal with things. But on the other hand, as you go through your story, you want to show that they aren't perfect. And that means they need flaws. Um, the flaws allow your characters to make mistakes, and of course, throughout the story, we want to build conflict and develop obstructions that keep them from getting to the final solution. And those flaws and making mistakes are one way that you can um, create those obstructions that come inherently, internally from the very character themselves. And they keep your reader interested and they keep your reader caring about your character as the story progresses. And that those bad choices um, just, what's the word I want to use? Enliven isn't the word, but enlarge your story. They enlarge your story. Uh, So let's talk a little bit about choosing the flaws that your character has. First of all, they have to fit with your character and they have to fit with the story. If your character can't cook and cooking isn't part of the story, then it doesn't even really matter. So those weaknesses drive their mistakes and the complications in the story. If the flaw doesn't fit the story, it's going to feel forced and readers won't care. So if not being able to cook is one of their weaknesses and cooking never comes up in your story, if you mention it, your reader just doesn't care whether they can cook or not. Let's get on with the story, right? Um, but significant dysfunctional flaws can also drive away your character. So great big huge um, dysfunctions like that, they take your story out of the plot and they start focusing on this giant dysfunction, and that doesn't work either. Um, and that challenge takes flo- takes precedence over the flow of your story, and your reader gets sidetracked from the story by this great big huge thing that is an obstacle for your character. So you have to reach a balance between flaws that count, weaknesses that count, and having them so big and overwhelming that they take over the story, because you don't want that either. But the main reason for the character flaws that you do give your character is that they make your reader worry about your hero or heroine. So balance is important. You want to keep your reader guessing. Um, so balancing your characters' redeeming qualities, all those skills that you give them for solving crimes, with their weaknesses, um, gives you, the writer, choices about their next action. It also keeps the reader wondering when the character has to make a choice. Are they going to make a wise choice, or is their choice going to be um, skewed by a weakness or a flaw? And at the moment of choice, your character has the potential to make a right decision, uh, But a flaw creates a high possibility for them messing up. And yep, you want your character to mix up from time to time. And it actually builds empathy for your character with your reader. So let's talk about some tips for choosing the flaws for your character. Uh, you want to understand your character and their personality to choose flaws that fit with their character and the story. Of course, there's always fear. Um, we can't forget the snakes in Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? And then those snakes come up later in the story. But fear is definitely a strong motivator. Everybody, all of your readers are going to understand fear. Um, that fear also works in your story because it leads to mistakes, it leads to wrong decisions, and it also leads to out of character behavior. The way your character normally acts is all of a sudden not happening because they are afraid. Um, so you have ample opportunity to add conflict when you use fear. So fear can be rational, like a fear of snakes, or irrational, like a fear of clowns. It doesn't matter as long as that is your character's fear, part of their personality makeup, then it works. In a mystery, the fear does not need to be the thing your character must overcome to solve the mystery. In fact, when details line up to overcome the fear, your story may feel too perfect by seeming convenient or worse, coincidental. So instead, aim for fears that hinder your sleuth in their goal pursuit so that they create conflict and cause trouble for your hero. Um, and as you work on your character background, when you're detailing out everything you know about your detective, you can ask some questions that might reveal some fears. So maybe past traumas that might affect their current behavior, or an irrational fear that will hinder their normal activity. And do they have a secret fear that they want to hide from everybody because it's just so embarrassing? Or what fear relates to the current problem that they're trying to deal with in your story? And is there a fear caused by the plot problem? Um, it could be fear of getting lost in the snow, for instance, and there's a huge blizzard. Um, and there's also fears from internal conflicts and how they're dealing with their own personality. So once you choose your character's fears, you want to show them early in the novel in the same way that you show their skills. Early on in the novel, you want to illustrate those fears. So when they cause problems later in the story, your reader knows, oh yeah, I remember they were afraid of snakes, and now look, snakes everywhere. Okay. Another flaw that you can use is personal prejudice. Um, every readers relate to personal prejudice, and it doesn't matter if your character's personal prejudice is the same as your reader's personal personal prejudice. Readers understand personal prejudices because everybody has them, all right? So, cultural and family opinions ingrained since childhood are hard to shake. And your hero's attitudes and opinions can keep her from a clear understanding of what somebody is saying um, with suspects. So, ingrained opinions can keep your character also from acting in wise ways or making positive decisions. So, when your character makes a decision based on a personal prejudice, a weakness, okay, This may lead to consequences that are not beneficial. So just play with that and think about how you can play with that in your story. So you can consider your characters' background, their culture, their family traditions, their schooling, to create flawed opinions. For instance, what did they learn to disapprove of or dislike as a child? Those are really ingrained. Even if, as an adult, they know what's wrong, they may still have a gut reaction when something comes up. Um, so you want to know what pushes your character's buttons and what actions or beliefs do they believe are wrong, that they feel are in conflict with their own personal moral or values. All right. Because this is going to color how they respond to um, suspects as people. If they have different beliefs, um, and then you want to know what are their intolerances, the things that they just can't stand. And it's another way of, what pushes their buttons. And you also want to know what will they fight for or about, because this can be in opposition to a weakness that they have. Um, and you also want to know, if this is the case, what do they believe is bad, even if it's accepted in their current world? So they may have a moral conflict with what is totally accepted in the world in which they have to work. Um, Biases and opinions affect how your sleuth interacts with the world, with people, with settings, and how they perceive the culture around them. Okay, I have a comment from Facebook user. Tell me your name, and I can tell you who you are. Who says, because she knows so little about the world in which she lives, when she has to venture further into it, she's afraid of almost everything. There you go. All right? Fear, 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 fear. She's also afraid that her father will reject her utterly if she fails at the task she has to complete. Okay, so fear and fear of failure. Those are two biggies. Those are great. Those are great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, so one more thing I wanted to talk about is that good traits in certain situations can actually be hindrances. So when you have those good traits, they can turn into flaws. For example, if your hero always does the right thing, but is surrounded by people who don't, they're going to get blocked. And if she's tenacious and encounters a situation that requires she give up to win, she's going to be in trouble. So just think about the situations. These are the things I like to put in the character background, because I may not know the whole story yet, but I have these ideas in their character background. So when I'm working on my story, I can go, "Oh, right. She really, really is stubborn about giving up. And now she has to give up on a certain point in order to actually win. And this causes a problem for her." So you can study your character's good qualities and then ask, what trait symbolizes your character's soul? That's a deepie, but just think about it, all right? And what positive trait could become a flaw, and in what situation? So that gives you an idea of, if you think about that, that gives you an idea of situations that can cause trouble for your hero or heroine. Um, and also, how can that positive trait cause as many problems as it solves? And what trait does your character have that's, basically a good trait, but annoys the heck out of the other characters in this story. Um, so you got a lot to play with, and I really recommend um, playing with these ideas in your character background because it's going to give you all this grist for your mill of creating your story. Okay, we have another comment. Oh, it's Lita, Lita Booker. Hi, Lita. Thank you so much. Those are great, great fears. Thank you so much for sharing those. Um, okay, I think that's just about all I wanted to mention today. One, you want to have flaws for your character, and two, you can use some of those positive traits and make them backfire on your character. And thank you, Lita. Thank you for being here, and thank you all for being here. And keep writing, and I will see you next week. All right. Thanks.